I know that the things that I eat and the things that I drink and the amount of physical activity I do all affects my health and my weight. But is there anything out there that can help guide me having a healthier eating style? Hi, my name is Danielle, and I'm a nutrition educator at Eat Right Philly. And today we're going to talk about Myplate. Today we're going to talk about how to use Myplate as a guide to creating a healthy meal. Having a healthy eating style is important because it helps to manage weight and helps to reduce the risk of overweight and obesity. Overweight and obesity can cause an increased risk for chronic diseases such as type 2 diabetes, heart diseases, and high blood pressure. A healthy eating pattern is important to establish as a daily habit now because the earlier in life you begin to make healthier food choices, the lower your risk for overweight and obesity and having adult chronic diseases. Myplate is a tool that is used to show a visual of what foods to eat and how much to eat at every meal. Notice Myplate has 5 food groups and how they can be arranged on your plate. All these different food groups can help you to create a healthy meal. Now, let's break down Myplate into its 5 food groups. Let's start with grains. We want to try to make half our grains whole grains. Whole grains can be things like bread, rice, popcorn, noodles, and cereal. Look at the nutrition facts label and read the ingredients list to know if your food is a whole grain. Next, let's talk about fruits and vegetables. Notice half the plate is fruits and vegetables, so we want to try to make half of our plates fruits and vegetables as well. Next, let's talk about dairy. For dairy, we want to try to switch to low-fat or fat-free dairy products such as cheese, milk, and yogurt. Last, let's talk about proteins. For our proteins, we want to work on getting a variety of different types of proteins. We know there's animal proteins such as beef, pork, and fish, but there's also something known as plant proteins. These are things like beans, nut butters, and soy products. Physical activity may not be visible on Myplate, but it's an important part to staying healthy. Choose activities you enjoy doing. Running, hiking, gardening, weeding, anything you enjoy, try to do it for at least 60 minutes every single day. Physical activity is a great way to maintain a healthy weight and to reduce the risk of developing chronic diseases later in life. There are several key messages that go along with Myplate, and they are based on the current dietary guidelines for Americans. Some of those include finding a healthy eating style, making half your plate fruits and vegetables, focusing on whole fruits, getting a variety of vegetables, whether that be canned, juiced, whole, or raw, making at least half your grains whole grains, remembering to read the nutrition facts labels to determine if your product is a whole grain, moving to low-fat or fat-free dairy products, varying your proteins, remembering that there are things like beef, chicken, and pork, but there's also plant proteins like beans and soy products. Drink and eat beverages and foods with less sodium, saturated fats, and added sugars. And remember to drink water instead of sugary beverages. Let's look at a couple different meals and identify the parts that are fruits, vegetables, dairy, proteins, and grains. Let's break down breakfast. Today for breakfast, we are having oatmeal. Let's look at its parts, starting with the peanut butter. Do you know where peanut butter belongs on Myplate? Peanut butter is a type of protein. Let's talk about the strawberries. Do you know where the strawberries belong? The strawberries belong to the fruit group. And lastly, do you know where the oatmeal belongs? The oatmeal belongs in the grain group. Remember, we like to get half our grains to be whole grains. And remember, we like to get at least 3 different food groups at every meal. And for our breakfast, we achieved that. We got proteins, fruits, and grains. Now let's look at our lunch. Today for lunch, we're having a sandwich. Let's look at the different parts of this sandwich, starting with the bread. Where do you think this bread belongs? So this whole wheat bread belongs in the grain group. Next, where does this cheese belong? Cheese belongs in the dairy group. Remember, we should try to aim for low-fat or fat-free cheeses. Next, what about this tomato? What food group does the tomato belong in? If you said vegetables, you are correct. Next, we have lettuce, and that belongs in the vegetable group as well. Lastly, what about turkey? Do you know where turkey belongs? Turkey belongs in the protein group. Remember, we should try to get 3 different food groups at every meal. In this meal, we managed to get vegetables, proteins, grains, and dairy. Lastly, let's look at dinner. Tonight for dinner, we're having stir fry. Let's look at its parts, starting with pasta. Pasta is a grain. Remember, we would like to try to make half our grains whole grains. Next, let's look at this carrot. Do you know where carrots belong? Carrots belong with vegetables. Next, let's talk about peanuts. Do you know where peanuts belong? They belong in the protein group. And lastly, let's look at this broccoli. Do you know where broccoli belongs? Correct, in the vegetable group. Remember, we like to get at least 3 food groups at every meal. And in this meal, we managed to get vegetables, grains, and proteins. Next time you have a meal, try to figure out which food groups you're eating and remember the tips from Myplate. Thanks for watching.